Hello everyone, good evening. I've been working in this industry with you, the drivers, for only a short time. Every day I see you in the association office or on the street and I hear your stories. You talk to me about rising insurance rates and insurance brokers that squeeze drivers because they can and because no one can stop them. I hear the stories of police that come out of nowhere and pin drivers against the Highway Traffic Act and bylaw enforcement. Cops that go out of their way to put drivers in their place. They give tickets for picking up, tickets for dropping off, tickets for turning and for stopping, tickets for doing your job, tickets that threaten your ability to make a living and run your business. I have heard loud and clear about how taxi driving is a job that is dangerous and unprotected. Khalil Talki is here tonight. As you remember, Khalil was simply doing his job when he was attacked. Not only was he victimized by his assailant, but he was victimized twice by the licensing system. And while he continues to heal his wounds and deal with insurance companies to feed his family, he still has to live with the fact that the man who did this to him is still out there on the streets nearly 3 months later. Maybe if the police spent a little more time looking for the vicious coward that attacks Mr. Talki and a little less time harassing drivers, we'd all be safer. And lately, I've heard a lot about the real financial pressure of gas prices. How many other small business people in this city are so directly affected by sky-high fuel prices? And yet drivers can do absolutely nothing about it, and they can expect no help in response. Now, of all the stresses and insecurity that a driver faces on the streets of our city, the one issue they all say is most pressing, the one issue they all agree must be acted on now, is the issue of 2 classes of license in this city. I have heard the anger at the system that governs the taxi industry, which continues to support a standard license for the privileged and affluent few, while the rest of you are confined to poverty, wages, and insecurity at almost every level. This is a daily attack on your dignity. From its beginnings 2 years ago, the iTaxiWorkers Association has been organizing and campaigning for an end to the ambassador system and a conversion to one standard for all. At that time, my father Peter, and Reza, and Abdi, and Sajid, and Terry, and John, and Peter Rosenthal, and all the others decided to put all their time and energy into creating and building an organization based on unity for taxi workers, governed by taxi workers. The first issue, the first cause they took on was the struggle to end 2-tier licensing. Since that time, many more in the industry and at City Hall have come to the same conclusion, that now is the time for change. Justice for taxi drivers can wait no longer. Now, when we look around the industry, we see no one continues to support the failed ambassador system. The current failed taxi licensing system in this city of Toronto has led to the real suffering of drivers. My friends, we need to ask why nothing is being done. We want to know what happened to all the promises the city made back in 1998. We want to know what happened to the promise to open the airport. We want to know what happened to the promise to provide city contracts. We want to know what happened to the promise to provide benefits and protection for drivers. The answer is the city never delivered. The city failed. The city told us all about how these promises couldn't be kept. And ambassador and W plate drivers have suffered ever since. The time for real and meaningful change has finally arrived. The time for reform that will finally address the historic wrongs has come. It's now time for change that will result in a taxi industry that serves both the public and the driver's best interests. Why, after all these years of injustice, is now the time for change? How did we get to this moment? Through the association, drivers came together and organized and made their voices be heard. We've lobbied and held press conferences highlighting your struggles and used all the resources available to push for change. And the city and the rest of the industry has watched as we have grown in size and influence. Everyone recognizes that when drivers come together and speak with one voice, they are strong and cannot be ignored. On June 6th, the human rights case for Asafo Adai will resume at the tribunal. This is another important tool to pressure the city. We know that when the tribunal rules that the current system is discriminatory, the city will have to answer. The association has also called for a rally on June 3rd in front of City Hall to show our support for all drivers seeking justice. We need to continue to build for that day. Take the leaflets, tell your friends to be there. We are calling on all drivers to get involved and help us to make change. You need to get into the streets. You need to support the human rights case with your donations to the legal fund. You need to talk to your city councilors and help them to understand your issues and build support for reform. We are tired of hearing all the excuses for why change can't happen. It's time for the city to tell us how they propose to fix the system. Recently, history has shown us what happens when people who are oppressed make it clear they will not back down from those in power and they will accept nothing less than change. We call on the city to immediately start the process of reform and show drivers and the public that they are committed to change that will benefit those that make the industry run. You, the drivers, and the customers we serve every day. Drivers United must be represented at the table in this process because we know we are not the only ones. Because we know we are the only ones that can ensure our interests and that of the public are protected. We know that without united drivers at the table, other interests in this industry will seek to protect themselves at our expense. This is an important point, and I want to emphasize it. If we don't pay attention and continue to push for reform that is good for drivers and the public, then those that make the biggest profits will surely protect their own. I won't take up more of time, but I want to finish by saying the next speaker, Anthony Fernando, is going to talk about how we can be most effective when we campaign for change at City Hall. His is another example of the association's support for your issues. We ask that you support us in this work and consider joining our association and the movement to change the system in Toronto. It is clear to me taxi drivers need to be united. We are strong when we act as one, stand together, and speak with one voice. If we do this, it will be impossible for the city to ignore our demands. One city, one standard for all. Thank you.